Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Diane McNutt.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Przynski.
Here.
Vice Mayor Marcia Jensen.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Steve Leonardis.
Here. Leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening is Claire Strickland. Claire, would you please come forward? I'm going to share with you a few achievements that young Claire has under her belt. Claire is currently a senior at Saratoga High School. She is the chair of the Los Gatos Youth Commission. And for those of you not familiar with the Youth Commission, it is made up of about 20 of our outstanding community youth, grades 7 to 12, that work to address youth issues in our community. Claire is also the founder and president of Saratoga High School's First Fashion Club. Claire is the co-founder and event coordinator of Saratoga High School's Gay Straight Alliance. Claire is a member of the Nordstrom Fashion Board. Claire is a teacher's aide at Sacred Heart's academic summer program. Claire is a junior zoologist at San Francisco Zoo. Claire plans to pursue public relations and fashion as a career. Claire likes writing, public speaking, and reinventing and creating clothes. And I can tell you, Claire is a fantastic public speaker. She usually sits right in this chair when she chairs the Youth Commission. This summer, during the State of Our Town address, Claire got up and spoke and totally upstaged me. I was completely amazed. Let's give a round of applause to Ms. Claire Strickland.
Please stand for the flag salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Claire Strickland. This time I would like to invite Cindy and Gary Harwin to the podium to join me. There's the microphone. Cindy and Gary have been chosen as the recipients of this month's Small Business Big Applause Award from the town of Los Gatos. This is an award that we created at the beginning of this year to honor those businesses in town who have been with us through thick and thin. Pet People is their business. It's been in business for 28 years. When I walk into Pet People, I had a pet that hopped away into rabbit heaven about 8 months ago, but before that happened, I would go into Pet People, and they cared more about my pet than making money or anything else. And I'm just truly amazed at the service you provide to our community and what you give back to our community, and that's what this award is all about. I'm going to read you a commendation and present the award. Whereas Pet People of Los Gatos opened its doors in Los Gatos in 1986 and was purchased by the current owners and long-term Los Gatos residents, Cindy and Gary Harwin, in 2008. Whereas Pet People is staffed by friendly, helpful, and highly knowledgeable team who assist in providing premium natural products to maintain a community of healthy and happy pets. Whereas Pet People is well known throughout Los Gatos and Silicon Valley for sharing their trademark message of Wag On, promoting Los Gatos as a pet-loving, pet-friendly community, and whereas Pet People of Los Gatos significantly supports and contributes time and resources to numerous community organizations, including America's Vet Dogs, Veterans Canine Corps, Los Gatos Montessorino Police Department, Crohn's and Colitis Association, Los Gatos High School New Millennium Foundation, Los Gatos Educational Foundation, Great Dane Drill Team, Los Gatos Lions Club, and the Junior League, and more. Whereas Pet People of Los Gatos has been recognized on several occasions for being an outstanding local business and has been honored with several awards, such as the Los Gatos Community Foundation's 2012 Beautification Award, the Senate District 15's 2014 Small Business of the Year Award, and the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce 2014 Business of the Award, among others. Now, therefore, the Town of Los Gatos, the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos, does hereby render with special appreciation and commendation to Pet People of Los Gatos for over 28 years of dedicated service to the Los Gatos community. Here's your proclamation. Here's your proclamation. Congratulations. Congratulations, Cindy and Gary. And if you'd like to share a few words, you can.
Monica said I could take an hour to talk about things because there's nothing else important going on tonight. So, no, just kidding. I would first of all like to thank literally the thousands of dedicated and loyal customers that we have. It's made this business such a pleasure for all of us. And of course, I'd like to also thank all of my employees, because without them, this would not have happened. So thank you, community, and thank you, my employees.
Thanks once again to Cindy and Gary for their 28 years, and we look forward to 28 more years. How about this? Okay. All right. We have another award to present tonight. This individual was named the 2014 Business Person of the Year by the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce also, honoring their significant and beneficial impacts to the community while maintaining a successful public relations business. And when being nominated for this distinctive award, the nominating peer noted that the individual is energized and dedicated to the town of Los Gatos in such a wide range of projects and programs, who has served consistently for so many years and inspired so many others. And the Chamber of Commerce also noted that the individual received the 2013 California Assembly Woman of the Year Award, 2011 Los Gatos Community Foundation President's Award, and was a national winner of the Best of the Silver Anvils Award from the Public Relations Society, all noting this person's dedication to community service. And the Chamber of Commerce praised the individual for their efforts to collaborate with other business leaders to reestablish the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce. Serving on the Chamber's board of directors and as president of the organization, and the Chamber of Commerce recognized the individual as a founder, advocate, board member, and volunteer for countless nonprofit and community organizations and their events, including the Town of Los Gatos Rotary, Los Gatos Unified School District, Girl Scouts of America, St. Mary's Church, their Pastoral Council, Good Karma Bikes, the Housing Trust of Silicon Valley, and many more. Now, therefore, as mayor, I am proud to present this proclamation to one of our very own, Councilmember Diane McNutt. We have one more award this evening. Would the members of CASA please come forward? There's plenty of room to spread out behind me. We're pleased to commend the remarkably effective group called CASA in our community on its 30th anniversary of working towards its mission of fostering healthy lifestyle choices that help young people resist alcohol and drugs. Their fingerprints are on so many positive programs, which you will hear about in the commendation. I don't know how many lives you've touched, but I'm looking forward to at least 30 more years of CASA in our community. It's a very important organization. I attended one of their meetings last week, and I just cannot thank you enough for what you do in our community. And I will read the commendation now. Whereas in 1984, CASA, a local nonprofit organization, was founded as the Community Against Substance Abuse by a group of Los Gatos parents in an effort to change teens' attitudes about using illegal substances through providing positive alternative activities. And whereas CASA plans, funds, and carries out events aimed at education and healthy lifestyles for children, including Red Ribbon Week, Drug Awareness Week, Safe Rides, the Under 21 Club, and the CASA Los Gatos High School Fashion Show. Whereas CASA also provides support and funding for the Los Gatos High School events such as Challenge Day, and provides grants to Student Leadership Club and awards scholarships to graduating seniors who have shown commitment and participation in CASA efforts at the high school. And whereas CASA partners with Teen and Family Counseling Center, Parenting Continuum, Los Gatos Elementary and High School Home and School Clubs, St. Mary's School, CT English, Lakeside Elementary, Los Gatos Montessorino Police Department, Project Cornerstone, the Town of Los Gatos, the City of Montessorino, and the Los Gatos Saratoga Recreation Department. How do you do all that in only 30 years? It's only been 30 years. Whereas the effectiveness of CASA in the Los Gatos community has been noted, and the organization has served as a model for development of other CASA organizations throughout the Bay Area. Now, therefore, the Town of Los Gatos, the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos, does hereby render with special appreciation, accommodation, and thanks to CASA for their outstanding achievement in teaching, supporting, and nurturing family relationships for the Los Gatos community for the past 30 years. Congratulations. You're all welcome to say a few words.
I do have a few.
Somebody said we got an hour, the previous, anyway. Joanne.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Town Council members, for recognizing CASA, Community Against Substance Abuse, for our work for the last 30 years. We especially appreciate this recognition from the town because we've always felt that drug prevention is an issue for which the entire community is responsible. The council, the police department, the schools, the parents, the merchants, all of us. As a result, we've not stuck our heads in the sand of denial. CASA has survived for many reasons, but if I were to look at the successes of CASA, in my opinion, there are two top reasons. Number one, you can look at this group of dedicated, inspiring volunteers who have kept the light of CASA burning for 30 years. We have felt the importance of keeping our kids safe, supported, and educated about the deadly dangers of drug use. These volunteers have worked hard to provide positive, alternative activities such as the ones mentioned tonight, Safe Rides, Under 21 Club, Red Ribbon Week, Gym Jams, poster contests, Friday Night Live, many, many more, and Steve mentioned some of the others. Plus parent networking and parent education, peers helping peers, and education, and much, much more. The second reason for CASA's longevity is that from the start, CASA was established for honest, true, and the right reasons, to care for the safety and health and future of our kids. Every one of us has had that mission in our mind. If you could prevent the use of alcohol and drugs at an early age, we felt we would have a better chance of success of preventing lifelong heartaches. It has been rewarding to have kids who now are parents to say, now that I am a parent, I understand what CASA means to our community and I'm glad CASA is still there for my kids. We know our work is not done, nor will it ever be, but the community working together for another 30 years, and some of us will look down and say, yes, CASA is still there supporting our students against the huge pressures of our society to use drugs and alcohol. Thank you to all of the council members for the commitment you've made to serve this town. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Beautiful. All right, photo. Everybody huddle in. I feel twisted.
You do. You are twisted.
In what way? A little twisted is good. Are you guys?
We're done. Congratulations, everybody. Thank you for coming in this evening. Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you, Joanne. A few seats have opened up in the front rows. If there are folks in the lobby or the aisles who would like to come forward and take a seat, front row seats available. I'd like to remind those in attendance this evening to please fill out a speaker card if you wish to speak. They are located right in front of you in the seats. Moving on to our closed session report, we have none this evening. We have council matters. Does any member of council wish to share? Councilmember Przinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a review of the last 2 weeks of council representation. On September 3rd through the 5th, I represented the town as its voting representative for the League of California Cities annual conference, and also as a member of the board of directors for the league. Served up my last board meeting and have retired from the board. On September 10th, I attended the Metropolitan Transportation Commission committee meetings in Oakland on the Administration and Programming Committee, as well as the Bay Area Toll Authority, and on September 11th, representing the town on the Cities Association of Santa Clara County.
All right, my turn. On September 4th, I chaired the West Valley Solid Waste Management Authority Board meeting. Among the noteworthy items on the agenda were the board reviewed the annual diversion report filed from Cal Recycle. The board also reviewed and discussed the annual performance report for the West Valley Collection and Recycling Company that picks up your garbage for you and your recyclables. The board discussed our authority's website. On September 10th, I chaired the West Valley Sanitation District Board of Directors meeting. It was a general business meeting. The main item of business was the board adopted a resolution acknowledging the completion of the installation of a sewer line for a subdivision, and we reviewed the monthly expenditure report. Manager matters.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, 3 items to report. We are currently soliciting residents to apply for 8 different boards and commissions. The description of the boards and commissions and the application forms are available on the town website, and applications are due to be submitted by December 5th for council consideration at your second meeting in December. Second, this Friday is our annual Screen on the Green at Oak Meadow Park with Monsters University at 7:30 and children's activities including face painting and games starting at 6:30 p.m. Last, The council last week received our public guide to town council meetings, which is a brochure that's available both online and in print to enable residents to know the best way to get their written communications to the council in advance of meetings, and also how to present during council meetings using technology and other resources. So this is usually available in the lobby. They may all be gone tonight, but we'll put more out tomorrow. That concludes staff report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Moving on to our consent calendar. Does any member of council wish to pull a consent item? Seeing none, any member of the public wish to pull a consent item? Seeing none, we'll look to council. Vice Mayor.
Move for approval of the consent calendar consisting of items 1 and 2.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. So we are moving on to our verbal communications period, and I realize that many of you may be here with the expectations of speaking on the North 40 this evening. At the last North 40 meeting, we closed our public hearing. So we would take a vote of council to reopen that public hearing. I do have several cards under regular verbal communications, which is to speak on any item not on the agenda, but I would like to just poll the audience to see how many people are in attendance who came here under the impression that they may like to speak on behalf of the North 40 or in reference to the North 40. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'll have to look to council for a motion to see if we'd like to reopen that public hearing to allow the speakers to speak on that item. So we're doing verbal, yes. So we'll go to verbal communications first. We'll invite them up, and then when we get to the hearing, we'll go from there. All right. So the first speaker under verbal communications is Gina Venta McGeelick. Did I get that right? Sorry, Gina.
Thanks for picking me first. Good evening. I'd like to ask tonight that you listen to the voice of the residents and not the developers. I've lived in Los Gatos the majority of my life. I went to the high school, I went to the elementary school. I moved back to Los Gatos because I wanted a community for my children to live in, a town, a good school system. It's what I was proud of and what I feel is important to my children. I want a town, not a city. And unfortunately, what I've seen, and it's very disappointing, is the fact that we've allowed all this development to happen. So unfortunately, as time has gone on, maybe we weren't aware of Bluebird Lane or what happened over by Fisher. But the fact of the matter is now we're faced with a very large development that's going to impact these schools. And I was here 2 weeks ago, and I heard some numbers that were conflicting, and I asked that we go back and we look at those numbers again to make sure we understand the impact on the traffic as well as the schools. I'm very concerned about the high school and the middle school. You can add an elementary school in the new development. You can add, unfortunately, other floors to some of the elementary schools, but the fact remains the same. You are still going to have congested traffic going to the high school and the middle school. I'm also concerned about how this is going to impact our children. What programs will be cut, how crowded the school classrooms will become, what other curriculums will be eliminated. So I ask, as you look at adding all these additional children to the school, not only through the North 40, but possibly through other developments, I ask that you reevaluate how you're going to impact these children. They are our future to this town, and I'm very proud to live here as long as we live in a town and not a city.
Thank you. Next speaker, Rick Tinsley.
Mayor, excuse me, could I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm a little confused on process because, as you just noted, under verbal communications, it's for items not on the agenda. So we haven't dealt with whether we're going to reopen the public hearing on North 40. So could we clarify so the speakers coming forward know what they should and shouldn't be speaking on at this time?
Thank you, Councilmember McNutt. Yes, so if you are speaking under verbal communications, the idea would be to, if you do have concerns about anything, speak in very general terms. Don't speak about the North 40 because that is a hearing that will be happening later on this evening. The council hasn't decided whether it would be opening the public hearing on that again or not. So you're allowed to speak on anything you want, except technically the North 40, I guess you could say.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My name is Rick Tinsley. I've been a resident of the town for 13 years, and I'm going to speak on school overcrowding. I'm going to read from my notes here that I wrote on this piece of paper as well. My wife and I moved to this town 13 years ago, and we bought into what we really saw as a very lovely, bucolic suburban neighborhood, a place to raise our children where there were a high quality of life and great schools. The irony is, we thought we were lucky because my son, my oldest son, started Van Meter right after the remodel of Van Meter, and we thought, great, we have this brand spanking new school that's going to accommodate everyone. Van Meter was crowded when my son started 10 years ago. The multipurpose room at Van Meter was over capacity when he was in kindergarten. Every assembly, play, concert that I've ever attended there has clearly been in violation of the fire code. So we've been dealing with overcrowding for a long time. Now, we have subsequently, of course, added a lot of capacity to the schools, but the schools have actually, the enrollment has grown much faster than we've been able to add that capacity. Right now, the only real capacity in any of the 4 elementary schools is at our new school in Lexington, which is half utilized. The others are more or less full. The enrollment of Van Meter is almost double what it was when my son started, and he's only a sophomore in high school now. In addition, of course, the quality of the education has also suffered. The numbers, you just can't keep ahead of the numbers, despite what I think is a great educational system and a great set of teachers and staff. The quality of education has deteriorated since I've been here, and I've been very involved in the schools. Dave's Avenue, unfortunately, lost its status as a California Distinguished School just last year. Per pupil spending at Van Meter, for instance, is actually $1,000 less than 4 years ago when my son finished Van Meter. So that's right, we're spending less money per student in our elementary schools than we were 4 years ago. Part of that, of course, is imposed on us by financial restrictions from the state. And that obviously is beyond the scope of this meeting, but don't worry, I'll take that up with Sacramento. What is within the scope of this meeting, of course, is the enrollment side of the question. The addition of so many high-density housing developments along Los Gatos Boulevard has directly impacted the quality of my kids' education, and that clearly drives the numbers. Frankly, we're not making as much in terms of tax revenue from these new developments as we require to maintain the same, much less an improved level of education. So I would strongly encourage the council members henceforth to think about the real long-term educational impact of high-density development, both the developments that have already taken place, when we've learned a lot of lessons. We've done enough of this now that we've learned a lot of lessons. Most of the estimates that were made regarding the enrollment spawning from those developments have been grossly underestimated, and our children are directly suffering, as well as the traffic, not to mention frankly, the dangerous situation we have around Van Meter and Fisher today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tinsley. All right. I'd like to ask members of the audience to save your applause till the end of the meeting so everyone gets a chance to speak. It does hold up the process, so we want to get everybody a chance. The next speaker is Tom Timo.
Thank you. Thank you, Town Council, for the opportunity to speak to you. I wanted to speak to you a little bit about the genesis of us creating an organization called Town Not City, and talk to you about why Rod Teague and myself, came up with the name, and we said, boy, there's a lot of things going on, and I'll be the first one to admit I learned a lot at my first town council meeting 2 weeks ago, and I'm almost ashamed to say that it was my first town council meeting living here 11 years. But I think I represent a large group of citizens in this town that, in effect, we've been sleepwalking. And we haven't been paying close enough attention. One day we walk our kids to school and there's Bluebird Lane. The next day we walk our kids to school, there's Laurel Mews. The next day we walk our kids to school, there's this big project on Blossom Hill. Well, there's even bigger projects on the horizon, and I guess maybe now we've finally woken up. And for those of us that have served public company, served on boards of directors, We understand corporate governance and government and the governance that they follow. There's actually a very sound process here. Developers bring their plans to a planning commission. The planning commission reviews it. They recommend to the developers what they need to do to mitigate the impact to the town that may be unintended. The developers fix it. They come back. And then the planning commission recommends to the town council that they approve it. Now, when a planning commission has not recommended approval, when a planning commission has come up with many issues with a particular development, that should not be voted on by a town council. It should be sent back to the planning commission. And I'm just speaking generally about any development. When you have a governance process, follow it and send it back and have those things mitigated. People in this town are not against all development. God knows the Yuki family has been very generous. Heck, they donated a school 50 years ago to this town. We're not against all development, but we are against development that does not follow proper governance and proper procedure that you have established and you have followed for so many projects. And shame on a lot of us citizens, myself at the front of the line, for not paying attention. We're changing that. And Town Not City, it doesn't have the logo of one particular project. Why? Because we want to keep Los Gatos a town. We don't want it to become a city. Please follow your process. Please follow your governance. Send things back to Planning Commission that need to go back, have them fix and mitigate the things so that the residents of this town can live in the town that you envisioned in your 2020 plan. It's a great plan. Let's stick to it. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is John Shepherdson.
Next one. Stay there. Next one.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherdson. Next speaker is Steve Bakota, followed by Shauna Goldine.
Hello. Thank you for letting me speak. My wife and I moved to Los Gatos a year and a half ago. We moved here because of community, not just because of town. We moved here because of the schools. We have 3 little children that we wanted to have go to school here, and we love the sense of community in the manor where we live. One thing I noticed, this is my first town council meeting, the first thing I noticed was looking at the logo, I see a lot of green space. And one of the first things that I'm sitting in and learning is maybe we're looking at eliminating some green space in the town. Is that in the best interest of Los Gatos 2030? The other thing I noticed in this meeting was hearing a little bit more about pet people and small business and how important that is to the town. Is the progress we're making on making this decision the right thing to do for the town and for the people? I don't know the answer to that. I came because I'm concerned, so I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Shauna Goldine.
Hi there. My name is Shauna Goulden. I'm a parent from Van Meter Elementary School. Approximately 3 years ago, I spoke in front of the school board as a concerned Van Meter Elementary parent. At that time, it was proposed that the 170 students from our neighboring school, Lexington Elementary School, be temporarily housed at our elementary school, creating an enormously overcrowded school setting. Ironically, I'm here today with those same concerns as a result of a proposed plan which predicts, at the very minimum, 180 entirely new students be enrolled permanently in our school district. In 2013, Los Gatos had standardized test scores among the top of the state of California. With a score of 929, Los Gatos schools were 92 points higher than the average school in Santa Clara County, and 140 points higher than the average in the state of California. This is why Los Gatos schools attract families with children, why our homes retain their value even in down markets, and why nearly the majority of the homes in Los Gatos house school-age children. The effects of overcrowded schools on academic achievement have numerous negative effects on a school. According to a study from UCLA's Institute for Democracy, Education, and Access, overcrowded schools are noisier, create more non-instructional duties for teachers, and children report having a significantly more difficult time with concentration. In addition, the classroom activities and instructional techniques were negatively affected, thereby inhibiting learning. This comprehensive study concluded that overcrowding has numerous devastating effects on schools, all of which impact the academic achievement and ultimately the foundations of children's lives. Although the opinions on this project may differ greatly among some residents, we are all intricately tied to one another. My son's school achievement scores affect your home's market value in the range of $200,000 to $300,000. We are linked by the success or failure of the children of this school system. Members of the council, can you afford to make that sacrifice? As a loving and responsible parent, I cannot. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Susan Freeman.
Thank you for letting me speak today. And as an 18-year resident of Los Gatos, this is also my first meeting. Shame on me, but great how we've all come together for this. I'm here to talk about safety in our schools, specifically at Van Meter, where I work with Shauna in the playground. I spent already 24 hours since our school started this fall, making our playgrounds safer, training our parents and our readers in the Cornerstone program to make a difference, to welcome everybody. But I can tell you that we cannot welcome any more children. Our kids are maxed out in their classrooms. My daughter went from a preschool class of 7 kids to 24 in the kindergarten. And it's just every single class is like that. We've lost a game room that was a safe space at lunchtime due to the overcrowding in the new classes that have come into Van Meter. So I'd like you to ask, from a safety issue, that we can accommodate as much as we try to be a welcoming community. There's just nowhere to put them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Tony Ventimiglia.
Whoever's in charge of the microphone here, turn the volume up.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Mayor and Town Council, for letting me speak. My name's Tony Ventimiglia. Live in the Manor, longtime resident of Los Gatos, over 40 years. My wife already spoke. She's been here for almost that long. I went to Berry Elementary School, which used to be off of Lark Avenue over there. For those of you who don't know about that school, it was closed in the late 70s. Also attended Fisher Middle School as well as the high school. So, and as I said, we live in the Manor right now. We have two kids. They both went to Blossom Hill School and are now at Fisher and at the high school. So don't have a traffic study in front of me, but one thing I don't need is a study to tell me how long it takes to go from the Manor down to the high school and back in the morning and in the afternoon. Probably at least 45 minutes round trip. This is without the two developments at both Paul Swanson Ford dealerships. When those two are finished, who knows how long it's going to take to get down there. So as it is right now, it's hard to drive anywhere in the town of Los Gatos, and it is a concern for the kids going to school. I was on a bicycle today, almost got hit in front of Lenardi's. But traffic is a main concern with our roads being completely overcrowded. And once, like I said, both Paul Swanson Ford dealerships are up and going, I don't even know what it's going to be like. I can't imagine when the big development off of Lark Avenue over there gets put in, what traffic's going to be like then. So hopefully the town council will take that into account before any projects move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last card I have under verbal communications. So we'll move on to our public hearing this evening, which is the North 40. It's a continuation from the September 2nd meeting. The North 40 Specific Plan, General Plan Amendment GP 14-001, Zoning Code Amendment Z-14-001, and Environmental Impact EIR-10-002. The project location encompasses 44 acres located at the northern extent of the town of Los Gatos, bordered by Highway 17, Highway 85, Los Gatos Boulevard, and Lark Avenue. I'd like to go to staff, our new Assistant Town Manager and Community Development Director, Laura Brevetti, for a report.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Mayor and Town Council. In addition to the materials that were provided to you for the September 2nd meeting on the North 40 Specific Plan, you have also received 5 additional reports, and bear with me while I summarize what you have received. You received a staff report dated September 10th that addresses school impact fees and senior housing, as well as transmitting correspondence and other attachments. On that same day, an addendum was also released that distributed additional public correspondence. Third, you've received yesterday an addendum number 2 that transmitted new traffic information and additional correspondence. Today, you received 1 desk item regarding schools and making a correction to the previous traffic information, as well as transmitting additional public correspondence. And this evening, late this afternoon, you received a desk item number 2, which has also been provided to you at the dais, that transmits traffic impact analysis information so that all council members have the same information. It's not new information, it just pulls specific tables so that way it's easier for you to reference. Let's see if I can do this. The next slide, please. Based on all of the testimony that you heard on September 2nd, as well as our Planning Commission's recommendations, you have many policy issues before you. The slide summarizes some of them based on those comments, and you may wish to consider these in your deliberation. Traffic, development capacity and density, building heights, how we wish to use our conditional use permits to achieve economic vitality, phasing, schools, as well as other issues. Staff from the Town Manager's Office, Community Development Department, Parks and Public Works, and other towns' departments are here to assist you as you deliberate, and we're here available to answer any questions. In addition, the consultants to the town are also available to help you as you deliberate. This concludes staff's report, and we're available to assist as appropriate. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ms. Brevetti. Does any member of council have questions of staff at this time? Seeing none, does any member of council wish to consider reopening the public hearing? Councilmember Brzezinski.
And just a comment, Mr. Mayor. When we were together 2 weeks ago, we we went from 7 o'clock to 11:45 in public testimony. And we closed the hearing at that time because we felt that we had an extraordinary degree of participation from our public. In the last 2 weeks, we have gotten numerous emails from the community. We have also gotten the petition that was circulated with many comments made by folks that enhanced or evolved what we had heard 2 weeks ago. My own sense is that tonight we probably will not be able to wrap things up and probably have to come back at this again. I could be wrong, but it's just a guess. But we may have then new information if we go ahead and analyze some of the requests that the Planning Commission made, the 35 issues that they raised, and look at some of the language evolution that we need to involve ourselves with tonight. So that's a thought that if we do come back at a future date with more information that needs to be analyzed or signed off on, then I'm assuming that we will have another opportunity for public testimony. But we certainly have seen the response from our community, and it's very appropriate, and it's great for those of you who are the first time out. I've been here in town 40 years. I've been on council 16, and it's not unusual that people kind of think things happen magically, and so they don't participate a lot in the public process until it starts to strike them personally. And I think that it's an opportunity for us to be able to dialogue tonight, but perhaps more engaged with the council's evaluation of what we've already heard, and then a return to do some closure on it at a future date. So I would not be making a motion to open the public hearing tonight for public testimony, because we've already heard a lot about the North 40 tonight up to this point in time. Surreptitiously, but nonetheless, so we did hear. And so for me, I think I'm very interested to hear what the council's response is going to be to the input we've gotten so far.
Thank you, Mr. Brzezinski. Any other comments on the subject of reopening the public hearing? Seeing none, we will move forward with the council deliberations on this topic, and staff has proposed these topics for us to go through one by one. We have traffic, development capacity and density, building heights, conditional use permits, and economic vitality, phasing schools, and whatever others we have to discuss among ourselves. So I think we will begin with Councilmember Brzezinski. I think your hand went up first. We'll take these on one at a time.
Good.
We'll start with traffic.
Thank you. I think one of the issues, it goes without saying, that traffic in the town has evolved in a way that we don't really feel is appropriate at this point. But we are the individuals who live at the pinch point of Highway 17 in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And it seems like all the residents in Santa Cruz need to work in Mountain View or Sunnyvale, and they come right down 17 every day. And the actual stats say that since 2009, the numbers of inbound and outbound commuters from Santa Cruz County, and this is statistically valid, is 18,930 every day. And that was analyzed in 2009 at the beginning of the recovery. It's quite possible right now that number could be somewhere between 25 and 30,000. And there's only one way to get into the county from Santa Cruz, and that's on Highway 17. So we see that, we have to address that, and we have this on our agenda to work on with Caltrans and with Valley Transportation to see if we can do some mitigation, because the problem is, whether we like it or not, people are being directed through our surface streets to bypass Highway 17 and Highway 85. If you were on Waze, that app, it directs people off of 85 onto Saratoga, onto Fruitvale, onto 9 into downtown. That's how Waze works when 85 is backed up. That's actually hard data, and it's observable data. My issue is in terms of traffic. We have traffic studies that we have engaged in, and I think lots of questions have been raised about what traffic is going to continue to do to us. And I'd like to know about whether further traffic studies would give us more information that we don't already know, both from the earlier data and from our own observation.
Thank you. I'll start, and then our Director of Parks and Public Works will probably add. As required by state law, we did complete an environmental impact report that identified the potential traffic impacts of the development of the specific plan, together with the proposed projects that were known at the time that the EIR was first contemplated. That's called the Notice of Preparation. So the EIR does disclose potential impacts cumulatively. The significant unavoidable impacts are on freeway segments for Highway 85. There are mitigations that have been identified for our neighborhood streets. With that, so if we were to do additional analysis, I know in the past the council has considered whether or not we should look at Campbell's Dell Avenue area plan, which now projects a higher level of development than was originally proposed. They're going through their own environmental impact report. That's a policy question for all of you. I don't know if it would change the outcome. It probably wouldn't, but it certainly is your discretion whether you would like that. Let me, before I go on, let me just ask if Mr. Matt Mordley would like to answer the question as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt Morley, Director of Parks and Public Works. In one of your attachments in the council agenda report for August 27th, we did provide you with some traffic analysis estimates for the time and costs associated with additional studies if the council so directed. But other than that, I think Ms. Privetti answered the question thoroughly.
Thank you, Mr. Morley. Mr. Brzezinski, you have a follow-up question?
Yes, thank you. And there was some question raised about the various projects proposed or actually in the ground that we have developed over the last couple of years. Would you specify what projects were actually included in that traffic study?
Yes, in fact, the desk item that we distributed this evening includes an attachment that identifies, I thought it did. Maybe it didn't. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not finding it quite with all of the information that has been provided. But there is a list of the projects that were identified in the traffic impact analysis, and it is and it includes the various projects such as the Samaritan project, the Palo Alto Medical Foundation building, the Swanson Ford, as well as already completed projects. It may be on page 109, if I'm remembering, of the TIA, where it lists out all of them. There are quite a number of projects, both in the town of Los Gatos as well as neighboring communities. And that was a point at time. And of course, our neighboring cities are considering other development proposals, but because we needed to complete the document consistent with state law, we stuck by that point in time and completed the analysis as such.
Okay, and one final.
Go ahead, please.
And this is in relationship to the proposed Dell Avenue project. Is my understanding, and verify this if that's correct, that when we did our initial EIR for the North 40, that we included the current 1 million square feet of commercial office, et cetera, that exists in the Dell Avenue area at this point. But we also projected another 1 million or 1.3 million, given the fact that we had heard. Is that not accurate?
That's correct. So it's the existing plus the additional capacity that the city of Campbell is contemplating.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With apologies to the PowerPoint and to staff and to the presumed order of events, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves because we have a number of documents and things that we need to consider tonight. The first of them is the question of certification of the EIR that we have in front of us. If we can't certify the EIR, we don't get to a specific plan, we don't get to a discussion of these items in context of a specific plan, and we don't get farther with direction to staff. So I'd like to just make a comment about what we're considering tonight, what we're not. I think a lot of people have assumed that what confused or conjoined the specific plan with a project application, with a developer, and with the EIR. What we're doing tonight is only considering an EIR for a specific plan. There is no project in front of us. So this town council still has the ability to change the specific plan if it finds that to be appropriate, and it still has the ability to reject the EIR or not certify it if it finds that to be appropriate. So my comments would start with the EIR, but backing up a bit, I had the privilege or the ignominy, I should say, of working on a specific plan for this property 20 years ago. And it was never adopted, and it didn't include any residential, interestingly. But now here we are considering a new specific plan, which has gotten a lot of work, a lot of input over a lot of time, and yet still was not recommended by the North 40 Advisory Committee, was not recommended by the Planning Commission, and in fact came out of the Planning Commission with 32 identified deficiencies, including traffic questions, downtown business questions, school questions, quality of life questions. And it's our duty to pay attention to that, and in particular with respect to the EIR, because that's the first thing we have to consider. I would actually be prepared, and I just want to see where it goes, to make a motion with respect to the EIR, and I will get to that after my comments. But the EIR that we have in front of us is dated April 4th of this year, and it identifies two significant unavoidable impacts. That is traffic congestion at 17 and 85 and traffic congestion on 87. If we were to go ahead and certify an EIR, given that significant unavoidable impact, we would have to make a finding, either that it's mitigated, it's not, because it's unavoidable, or that the economic and social benefits outweigh the problem that's created by the traffic, or, as is suggested in our staff report, that we make the finding that the problem is not in Los Gatos' jurisdiction, that it's a Caltrans problem. I can't make that finding. I can't ignore the fact or punt to Caltrans to say, it's your problem, so I'm not going to address a solvable, knowable problem. I can't make that finding. So what I would do with respect to traffic instead is look to what's in our EIR and say that there is new significant information that could not have been known and was not known at the time our EIR was certified, which is the Dell Avenue project went from 1 million square feet to 3 million square feet. Campbell's notice of preparation for their environmental impact report came out on July 2nd. We could not have known that on April 4th. It's not contained in our EIR, and it's significant. And given its location, it will absolutely impact the same identified freeway interchanges that are significant unavoidable impacts in our report, probably going further up 17 to the Camden Avenue exit, down to Lark, for how you would get to Dell. So at a minimum, my motion would include a review of the Dell Avenue project. Another item of information that we didn't have was regarding the Samaritan, Good Samaritan ER expansion and the Samaritan Court office building, which has been a concern to many Los Gatos residents. All of those projects were not considered in this EIR, and their traffic figures aren't contained in it. There is a CEQA law whereby an EIR that's already been certified can be reopened if there's significant new information not available at the time. We're in a fortunate position that we haven't certified an EIR, and we can go back and look at these and fix this EIR if it's appropriate and get that information. With respect to traffic analysis, our EIR and everything that the town does is governed by charts and statistics that we find in the ITE Traffic Trip Generation Manual, which I actually went down, thank you, Mr. Morley, and went through. It's huge, and it has a name for everything and a chart for everything, and a use equals a certain amount of trips. Those can be deceiving because those are national averages, and those averages aren't necessarily based on real experience in Los Gatos and aren't necessarily accurate, particularly with respect to a mixed-use development. In fact, the ITE Trip Generation Manual uses 6 developments in Florida to figure out how many trips it takes for a mixed-use development. There are actually alternatives that are available to us. The EPA has a new mixed-use chart and scheme that allows analysis in mixed-use developments. The, I'm going to get this wrong, National Cooperative Highway Research Program, Report 684, also sets forth an analytical scheme for determining traffic from a mixed-use development. This is information that we should look at and we should have before we certify an EIR. The other significant unavoidable impact is the loss of the agricultural land, which is 27 acres of orchard. And it's a historical impact, it's a significant agricultural impact. I understand that at some point we're probably going to lose those trees, but in order for me to go ahead and certify an EIR, I would have to find that the loss of those orchards is outweighed by the economic, social, or whatever benefit by development. And if I'm going to do that, I would have to vote tonight for a statement of overriding considerations, which is proposed to us by our staff in our staff report, which says that the raising of the orchard is justified because the architectural style in the proposed development will feature gestures to the architectural heritage. I can't do that. I think that the town should be considering, with respect to the specific plan, not just the EIR, but how can those orchard trees be preserved in a meaningful fashion? How can they be incorporated into a specific plan that makes use of them? And it's interesting because our EIR also, in a different section with respect to environmental impacts or effects, one of the things it cites is the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's 2010 Clean Air Report. And one of the things that's recommended for mitigating impacts from greenhouse gas emissions, CO2, and heat is planting of shade trees. So it's sort of interesting that we would get rid of trees and then plant other trees to take care of the problem we've created by getting rid of trees. But the basic issue I have with respect to those 2 significant unavoidable impacts is, number 1, the traffic. I don't think we should punt to Caltrans. I think we should get information, and I've outlined what that information is. I cannot make a finding to justify getting rid of the orchard because there are architectural gestures to our agricultural heritage in Santa Clara Valley. With respect to schools, we've had a lot of information in a staff report or from other people that the council really can't consider impacts to schools in the certification of an EIR, except that we got a report today that said what we can consider is impacts on parts of the physical environment that are not school facilities, such as traffic, air quality, and noise, are not excused from consideration for the EIR. We all know that the biggest traffic generators in our town are the schools. And we cannot ignore the traffic generation that would be created if 180 children, as is indicated by the school, are somehow transported from their homes on the North 40 to Van Meter, Blossom Hill, Daves, or Lexington Avenue. It's something we should consider. On October 14th, we know that the school district is getting a demographic study from their demographer. It would be irresponsible for this council not to consider that. Finally, with respect to the downtown, we've had a lot of testimony about urban decay. Our EIR declares that there is no impact at all by retail development on the North 40 on our downtown. We all know that that's not true. We've had lots of suggestions, and it's based on an urban decay analysis, which is the wrong analysis. That urban decay analysis is, well, if the space gets rented out for something else, could be a warehouse, could be redeveloped into housing, could be something else, then that's okay, there's no problem. And we all know that the issue that we're discussing is the life and vitality of our historic downtown. And so I think we're looking at the wrong analysis. We've had suggested to us by a member of the General Plan Committee, by business members, by our own Planning Commission, things that we could do to get other information regarding the downtown with the correct analysis. And the correct analysis would be economic impact. At our last meeting, Mr. Copobra suggested that perhaps that should come when we knew who the tenant would be in the development. That seems to be putting the cart before the horse, because once there's been a specific plan approved with a certain amount of retail allowed, and then we analyze whether or not it has an impact, strikes me that that's too late. So what I would be looking for additional information regarding our downtown and our EIR, our case studies based on hypothetical tenants, with input from business owners, possibly examining whether or not it makes sense to either remove restrictions on downtown businesses that exist now that will not exist on the North 40 under the specific plan as proposed, or place those same restrictions on the North 40. But those things should all be examined before we even go forward to this list. So my motion is to not certify the EIR and obtain the information that I've outlined.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. I'm going to second the motion. I appreciate all the detail. So I'm going to back us up a little bit, at least for myself. The Vice Mayor has a lot of detail. I'm going to do what I consider the 30,000-foot view. There are a lot of people who have, in the past weeks, months, have talked about the specific plan as, a single issue, and that they talk about it as though there's an applicant. Now, you've heard a little bit about this, but we don't have a developer before us now. We don't have a property owner before us now. We have the specific plan proposal, and that is coming from the town of Los Gatos. If we were to adopt a specific plan somewhere down the line, it would have probably hundreds of issues wrapped within it, and it would have 100 decisions that would have to be made. And so that is something that will happen down the line, and if and when we have a specific plan, and if and when a developer and a property owner come forward, they will have to abide by that specific plan. Will they have to do everything that is in that specific plan? The answer to that is no. You techies out there, it's going to be like a drop-down menu. The specific plan has a drop-down menu. The developer, the property owner, works within those variables in the specific plan. But the reason I seconded this motion is I agree with the maker of the motion. We are not at the specific plan, because before you get to the specific plan, you have to certify the EIR. I said there were hundreds of issues within the specific plan. When we get to it, there are, I know, thousands and thousands of pages in our environmental impact report. And what is that environmental impact report doing? It's looking at impacts. Did it find impacts in our environment within the specific plan? Yes, it did. Then once you find there are impacts, the next question you ask is, can those impacts be mitigated? Most of them addressed, in other words. Most of them, yes, they could be addressed. But as the maker of the motion pointed out, there were several issues, and for me the most significant one, quite frankly, was traffic. But there were several issues that could not be mitigated, and when they can't be mitigated, you have to do a statement of overriding considerations. And I cannot make those statement of overriding considerations either. And I want to point something out. I mean, I've heard this in the community for the last couple of weeks or maybe months, that the Planning Commission, passed this on to the council with an implication that the Planning Commission sent it on with an approval or an acceptance. That is not true. The Planning Commission, in one of their motions made by Commissioner O'Donnell, which was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission, said that the Planning Commission could not make the overriding considerations of the environmental impact report either. Once the Planning Commission cannot make those overriding considerations, it's not approving the environmental impact report, which means that it's not certified, which means it's not sending the specific plan to the council for approval either. So I actually applaud the work that's been done by this community, by staff, by the Planning Commission, and I applaud all the work that the Vice Mayor did. As I said, I stand here seconding her motion.
We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any discussion from any other council members? Councilmember Brzezinski.
Well, first of all, this could be a real short meeting. My sense is that I do appreciate the comments made both by the maker of the motion and the seconder, but understanding CEQA, understanding how the EIR is developed, and realizing that the issues that were presented as unmitigable are Highway 17 and not Highway 87, by the way. It was 87 was mentioned, but it's 87 was not mentioned. It was 85 and 17. And the issue for us really is not something that we have control over because it is Caltrans. So I know that's punting or acceptance of the reality that what we can mitigate will be mitigated. And if you look at the rest of the EIR, the entire document, which is a very thick document, we have been able to mitigate those things that were of impact, including the historic issues, the agricultural issues, those kinds of things. My sense is that the EIR is a document that appropriately reflects what CEQA as law is designed to do, and that is protect the environment. And I think you can take a direction that moves off what the intent of CEQA is and find ourselves totally wrapped up in the confusion of legal linguistics. And for me, I do feel that the EIR as presented us is appropriate. It doesn't just look at, for example, the 1 million square feet of proposed office in Campbell. It looks at 2.3 million. The million that exists and another 1.3 million up to the total of 3 million as proposed. But we know that from current data that's perhaps a 20-year off program, and that it's nowhere near something that Campbell can say, yeah, we'll go with that and we'll put the shovel in the ground tomorrow. They had a meeting, the Campbell folks had a meeting. That meeting was well represented by probably as many as are here tonight of those neighbors of Hacienda and Winchester. And my report was they were extremely upset with, what are you pushing down our throats? So we're not talking about a fait accompli out there. We're talking about a proposal that is at the very beginnings of the drawing board. Secondly, I was on this 2-year advisory board. I think we did another 2 years before that just to kind of prep things. But I also remember the 1999 specific plan out there. I remember going to Charette in 1996, where we were proposing all kinds of things for the North 40, including our auto dealership island. Okay, and at that point, the reason why we didn't put residential out there is because we wanted this to be the cash cow, the revenue stream for the town. And it was so far out in the north, it wouldn't make any difference. And that was the argument at the time. And thank God we didn't go there. And now we're at a point where, having done a very significant amount of work within the context of this advisory body, which was open to the public and had public testimony every time we met, we've got a plan that probably is extremely unique to the town. And just for the record, I believe in town over city. Okay? And I think we all do up here. That wasn't a question. The question is this an appropriate specific plan for a property in town that that will at a certain point be developed? Because as far as I know, in this country we still have some concept of property rights and the opportunity for a property owner to develop in some fashion within the context of community advisement. And I think what we've been doing for the last 2 years plus is community advisement. And now we've got a very complex plan, and as Councilwoman Spector pointed out, this is a plan. This is not a project. We don't have any development that's in front of us. And all of the numbers that were created over the last couple of years were all created in the context of ceilings, not floors. So the next steps in the process would be actually to have some development come forward, which we do not have at this point. We're looking at a plan. So from my perspective, I do think that probably we can make those findings to accomplish what we're attempting to do with the EIR. I would hate to see us at this point in time move away from what we've done for the last 2 years plus and in effect start over, because that's really what we would be doing at this point. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Councilwoman Spector.
Thank you. Well, I can certainly appreciate what Mr. Brzezinski is saying about, working on this for a long time, because I certainly have. This is, not my first meeting on the North 40. It's been many, many, many years. But it is true that right now, the environmental impact report locates the unavoidable impacts at freeways. However, it also indicates that many of our intersections will move to an F rating or F status. It also shows that. Now, one of the reasons I'm supporting this motion is because it is broadening our analysis to include the Dell proposal, to include the Samaritan Court office building, to include the expansion of the Good Sam emergency room. It may very well be, I don't know, and that's one of the things I want to get around to. I don't know what that is going to show. But two things. First of all, I don't want to risk approving the EIR and moving forward tonight when I don't know those things. I am not comfortable doing that as a representative of this town. And secondly, it may very well be that we find out that, the question is, well, how do you know what Campbell is going to do? Well, the thing is, we may not know. Campbell may not know right now, but I cannot believe that when people do traffic analysis or environmental impact analysis, and they have projects that are not at fruition, that they can't make some kind of educated research an estimate as to what the traffic generation is going to be. At a minimum, I want the best information possible from those potential developments, or two developments, one potential development, before I can move forward on approving this EIR.
Vice Mayor.
To echo what Councilwoman Spector said, actually, among other things, what CEQA is attempting to accomplish is to provide decision makers with an informational document. And so what my motion contemplates is that we make sure that that document contain current, relevant, reasonable information where we can make the best decision. And we know that that information, particularly with respect to school impacts, which directly impacts traffic, is out there just a month away. And I understand that there are many who think it's appropriate that we move forward given that we've spent so long. But the fact is that we have a document before us that's not been recommended by those bodies that have been working so long. So there's no reason in my mind not to take another month, couple months, to get that new and current and correct information so that we can all, us, you, everyone, make the best decision that we can make. So this is not putting a halt or starting over. It's not even affecting the specific plan, which we're not my motion's not even addressing. What it's doing is asking for additional information so we can have an informational document under CEQA that allows us to make the best decision that we can.
Councilmember McNabb.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to take this opportunity, because I have a feeling this agenda item is about to end, to address the people who have talked to us about concerns about the school. And one thing I would like you to consider is a suggestion that came up at our last public hearing. The absolute best way to protect yourself from any additional housing units in the North 40 is to have the district boundary moved. That way you don't have to worry about it. Right now it's half Los Gatos, it's half Campbell, other school districts. So, I would suggest you think about talking within your district about moving those boundaries, because then you're 100% guaranteed there will not be one other child coming into the schools from that area. So that's something for you to think about as you mobilize and you go forward. I also, before I address the motion, do want to echo what everyone else has said so far, which is, again, remember, this is not a specific development project that's before us. It's a plan. And when we say plan, what we mean are parameters. So it's not a plan like, here's a plan for your new house. It's a plan that says you can do this kind of a thing, but you can't do that kind of a thing. It can be this high, but not that high. It doesn't say at all what it's actually going to be. It just gives us parameters by which to evaluate projects if they are actually put forward to us. Now, in terms of the motion that's before us right now, it sounds wonderful to have more information. We always want to have more information, but how much is too much? How much is ever enough? And I don't think that the information that's being requested is going to give us any different perspective or insight over what we have right now. The CEQA requirement is you take we take a moment in time and you analyze what is that situation, because the world is constantly changing. So all of a sudden Campbell comes up with additional development. So what happens in January when there's a project in San Jose, Cambrian Plaza is going to be redeveloped into an urban village? That could happen. Next March, Samaritan Medical Center could introduce another building. That could happen. It'll never stop. There'll always be a reason to postpone it, always a reason to be wanting more information. I think what we have right now is information that is legally acceptable under the laws of CEQA, and we should move ahead so that we can get to the specific plan, which is the real meat of the matter, as far as I'm concerned, that really wants to have the community input and set the guidelines for those development, and just try to keep moving ahead on this so that we can get to some end. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. The additional information that we will get or may get from the, if this motion passes, will help me with the specific plan, in the sense that if we find that because of the increased traffic or other environmental issues, that if we reduce the housing by X percentage, then we wouldn't have an environmental impact or significant environmental impact. Or if we reduce the commercial by X percentage, then we wouldn't have a significant environmental impact. In other words, that additional environmental information might help me determine, is this specific plan as it's currently perceived should that be pulled back on the commercial side? Should it be pulled back on the residential side? So I could see that this additional information will be of benefit to me in applying it to the specific plan when the specific plan comes back.
All right, I have a question for staff. The information being sought by two of the members of council, how long would it take us to get that information?
Thank you. As noted in our staff report dated August 27th for the September 2nd meeting, we estimated that to update the traffic analysis to include the Dell Avenue would cost an estimate of $15,000 and an estimated time of 9 weeks. Based on the motion that's currently on the floor, there were additional projects added to the list for the cumulative analysis, plus there was a request to use something other than our typical traffic methodology, considering other traffic generation numbers, et cetera. So that would affect not only the cumulative analysis, but would also affect the baseline analysis for the project overall. So this is very much an underestimate. We would need to look at our budget to see what it would actually cost. So that would be one thing. The other piece, after Councilmember Spector's comment just now, I just want to make it clear that the motion on the floor does not contemplate different development capacity or density. And if there is an interest to study reduced housing numbers or commercial numbers, we would need to know that, because if we are going to go back and do additional studies, we'd like to know what the full range of questions that the council has so we can do those studies as efficiently as possible. So the policy issues on the slide were not intended to only focus on the specific plan, but also to guide any additional analysis that you would like for the environmental document. So we are looking probably at 2015 before we have revised data. It would require recirculation so that the public could comment on the document, and then we would be reconvening with public hearings before our planning commission and then subsequently town council. So this puts us into, the next calendar year easily.
Thank you for that. So, Councilmember Brzezinski.
Yeah, and just to refer back to the EIR, there was an alternative 2 proposed. There were a number of alternatives proposed in the document. Alternative 2 is an increase in residential and reduction of commercial alternative, which actually reduces traffic. Probably takes care of the mitigation that the Vice Mayor is concerned about. But what it would mean would be to reduce our commercial by 25% fully in the North 40, but increase the residential by 25%, putting those in the north. That's not an alternative that I would be in favor of, but that takes care of the issue that was raised relative to this traffic mitigation impacts. So I think the EIR is a complete document. It has dealt with most of these issues, and if you read it thoroughly, then you can see where in great measure some of the issues raised have actually been asked and answered at this point.
Vice Mayor.
In response to Councilperson Brzezinski and Ms. Perbetti, the alternative traffic analyses that I talked about, I got those online from the EPA website, and I have the chart. I also have an article from the National Highway people about how they do the analysis, and that it's specifically limited to mixed-use developments, and it may make a difference for how this council determines what's appropriate in the specific plan, not an alternative in the EIR, but for later determination when the specific plan comes back to us, how traffic might be captured on site by increased office, by whatever it may be, and there's different calculations for that. May give us information that we don't have now, and it's not done by ITE, because the ITE trip generator is a traditional look at standalone uses in a suburban setting across the nation. So it allocates more trips to offices than it does to residents. But it's an average. It's not local knowledge. It's not local reality on the ground in Los Gatos. We know that in Los Gatos, a 3-bedroom house has probably 3, maybe 2, 3, or 4 cars if your kids go to high school. If they drive to the high school, it's a huge traffic generator. If you have office space with like a live-work loft or something where you're trying to capture on-site, it may be different information. So it doesn't have to be another alternative in the EIR. It doesn't, you can look at the charts that I looked at. The reason I went to look at IT was because I was trying to figure out how can office be more than residential? And the answer is that it's built on it's analyzed in a different model across the country than we use in Los Gatos. So I'm not cowed. I don't think the EIR has all that information. And if I step back from the 30,000 feet and say there's two substantial unavoidable impacts, that's the traffic on the freeway, and that's the loss of the agricultural land. And what do I have to do to certify this EIR? Given that those exist, for the reasons I stated before, I can't do that.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Brzezinski.
Sure. I know most of you are here for the schools. I mean, that's pretty clear. And I think we need to have something to address that with. Some of us are. I believe, I have the floor at this time. Okay. I'm going to make a recommendation to the school district as well, because Councilwoman McNutt made some comment about district boundary change. Brookside School, that's the school over off of Hicks Road, I believe. 89 kids. Is that the school that's in San Jose? That's part of our district. It's one of the strange things about our district is that we have a development that's in San Jose that feeds kids into Los Gatos schools, and they have to come from Hicks Road to get to Los Gatos. I would say a boundary change, something to reevaluate, definitely at this point in time. But as far as the issue of schools, we are constrained. There are definite issues of constraint that we have to deal with in relationship to schools, and SB 50 made that very clear. And I wonder if staff would be willing to comment to the issue of schools as we relate it to residential development.
Well, I think we've articulated it in about 3 or 4 different staff reports in different ways, but SB 50 that was passed by our legislature really is the defining statutory scheme on how impacts are addressed to schools. And I even cited in recently the County of Madera case that's in the staff report, and I would urge anyone from the public to look at that. That's online. And that's a specific case that real quickly, the fact pattern is that was a large development was going to bring in over 3,000 new students to the school district. And the school district said that it would provide overcrowding, it would create school facilities needed. And they sued the county over the decision because the county said we're hamstrung by SB 50, which is a statutory scheme that looks at the square footage of the development and you pay a fee, and that's the end of it. You can't look at the impacts by the number of students that are going to be enrolled. And the court specifically said that that is the exclusive remedy for impacts to schools. You cannot require anything more than that statutory scheme, even if it's going to be over 3,000 students. So from a CEQA standpoint, the document that we have from our analysis says that it was going to provide for, I think, an additional 45 students, and the school district says it's going to be 180 students. That is irrelevant whether it's 45, 180, or 3,000. Regardless of what the number of students that are brought in by a new development, the statutory scheme will spell out exactly how much money they pay the school district, and that's the end of the discussion. You can look, though, at that 45 students or that 180 or whatever the amount is as to other areas outside in your EIR, which is traffic, which is air quality control. So I think part of this motion was to look at is those different numbers. Is it truly going to be 45 new students, or is it going to be 180 or whatever that number is, to look at where those students would go to school, and does that change the traffic counts? Does that change the air quality counts? So I believe that's where the motion maker was going to look at those different numbers and see if they are what the true numbers are.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It would be helpful to me, even as a seconder of the motion, if we got more clarity, maybe from the maker of the motion and the staff, as to what we were looking for going forward, so we can help clamp down on that time frame. I'm comfortable with the motion as it relates to traffic and the additional Dell, Samaritan Court, and Good Sam ER data, and folding that in. And if I might, Mr. Mayor, go to the staff. That is the additional information which you're saying will take 9 weeks to fold in?
That's correct. We provided an estimate to you about a month ago or so, saying that if we were to reopen the cumulative analysis, we would need to, it would take about $15,000, including peer review of the traffic study, and about 9 weeks to complete. That does not include recirculating the document for public comment, so that's just getting the bare report completed.
And then with regard to the historical or cultural, if I heard the maker of the motion correctly, she was saying that, and I'm sure she'll correct me if I heard her wrong, that she was looking at, a more expansive agricultural, what's the word I want? The more of an agricultural presence, that's the word, more of an agricultural presence in the specific plan. And if that is the correct analysis of or understanding of the motion, I don't see where that would be a significant amount of staff time. So I guess I'm going to staff and or the maker of the motion.
Yes, so let me defer to the Vice Mayor, please.
With respect to the agricultural, first and foremost, the motion was that in order to certify the EIR, we would have to adopt a statement of overriding considerations that indicated that essentially the economic benefit of the development outweighed the loss of the orchard, and that was okay because architectural features in the proposed plan made a gesture toward agriculture. I said, I can't do that. Mm-hmm. So does that mean there needs to be additional information regarding the orchard? No. But if there's information that comes back regarding traffic or other things, and it's a concern because we haven't even gotten to the specific plan, and lots of people that talk to us about the specific plan had issues with it. The Planning Commission has issues with it. So that may be something that's down the line that doesn't need to be included in an analysis at this point. However, I would encourage someone to look at it. With respect to the other traffic models, I think I'm not asking for a complete new alternative to be included in an EIR. What I'm saying is that I know, and I know that CEQA says, and our own traffic mitigation fee policy that we've just adopted says, that we can look at things besides the ITE trip generation manual. So what I'm encouraging is that given that we have these alternatives that are easily found out there from the EPA and from the National Highway, why don't we take a look at them and include that in a report back to the council that gives us information about, well, if we then get to the specific plan and want to change that to incorporate some of the items from those different analytical tools, maybe that's appropriate. The other thing that I was specifically asking for additional information on for the EIR was what I'm going to call an economic impact analysis or additional report in addition to the market study that we have that can better address potential impacts of North 40 development on our downtown, to include things like size of retail space, which Mr. Arzi talked about last time, a hypothetical case study, which Mr. Hudis talked about, using different kinds of retail and comparing them with how they might affect our downtown, and potentially looking at how regulatory schemes or ordinances or policies that we have that affect the downtown, for example, formula retail, that is not included in the proposed specific plan, should those be looked at, as because many of our speakers talked about, doesn't it make sense to have an even playing field? And so perhaps we should look at that. So for the specific information items, it would be the Dell Avenue, the Good Samaritan emergency room expansion, the Samaritan Court office building, a look at alternative methods of traffic and analysis, if you will. I'm sorry, I forgot the demographic report from the school, because leaving SB 50 aside, as Mr. Schultz just reiterated, we can look at traffic impacts from schools. As I understand, the demographic study will tell us where student generation is coming from. They already have data indicating that the estimates for Bluebird Lane and Laurel Mews were much higher than was anticipated, and those students are going to have to go somewhere. We know that we're going to get that report independent of our staff from a demographer hired by the school district on October 14th. So that's what I'm looking for as the maker of the motion.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just want to say that staff is happy to do those additional studies. I think looking at the EPA, and thank you again for your research on those other generation numbers, we would need to crank the model again using those other factors. So that would be an analysis that would have to be done and then would be available for your consideration. And we're also happy to look at the new demography report that the school district will be considering next month and analyzing traffic from that. As it relates to agricultural impacts, even if the council were to decide to retain more of the orchard, we would still have a significant unavoidable impact in that area. But it is possible, when the council is ready, to identify other facts or findings or statements of override. So you're in no way limited to the words that were provided to you. There are other ways or other benefits at the time, whenever you're ready, to consider those. So staff is open to doing the necessary analysis. The economic impact analysis would be again, a new analysis. We're happy to do it, and thank you for the specific guidance. But it will take time, and I think just in caution and protection for the town, we would most likely want to recirculate all of this new information, so that way the public would have the ability to comment on it, and our planning commission and the town council would have the benefit of those comments as well.
Thank you, Ms. Pavetti. Any further discussion from council on this? I guess it's my turn to weigh in. In the interest of transparency, I will be supporting the motion. I think a little bit more time will not hurt. I am a little bit saddened by the fact that there was so many people here for their first time this evening, and some of them claiming that this is the first they've heard of the project. I realize that it has been going on for a long time, and I empathize with the parties involved with the development as well as the family that owns the property. However, I think the result for the community will be much better if we spend a little bit more time vetting some issues. And as you can see, there are a great many issues. Some of those brought up by Councilmember Brzezinski, Councilmember McNutt, about potentially redrawing school district boundaries and things like that. Those take time, and to address some of those issues, I think we need a little bit more time. But I think certifying the EIR at this point would not be in the best interest of the people. I hope that those who did not get to speak tonight, if you come back sometime in 2015, you will have a chance to speak. So I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The motion carries 3-2. Council members Brzezinski and McNutt dissenting. I'm going to request a short break so the room may or may not clear out. Come back in 5 minutes. going to call the meeting back to order for our next item of business this evening. It is Plan Development Application PD-13-002, General Plan Amendment GP-13-001, Environmental Impact Report EIR-13-003. The project location is 375 Knowles Drive, and the property owner is the County of Santa Clara. The applicant is KT Properties. And handling our staff report will be Mr. Joel Paulson, our senior planner.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, on August 5th, the council considered a number of items. Related to this project. They took action to rescind a previously adopted resolution regarding the use of the property, and they continued the matter to tonight's meeting so that they could get information from both the county and El Camino Hospital regarding the future use of their properties and their assets. So those letters have been supplied to the council, and additionally, the applicant also submitted a letter, and staff is available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Questions for staff? All right, the public hearing has also been closed on this item as well at our last hearing on this item. So there are nobody speaking on this, so we'll go to council for discussion or motions. Councilmember McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. So as I recollect where we left off on this, we had a pretty thorough discussion as to whether or not this site was appropriate for residential. We did rescind the previous ordinance that had the somewhat odd language, in my opinion, designation of office and affordable housing. It didn't say, but not market rate. So that's no longer an issue. I think we talked about at length the type of housing that's there. I actually want to applaud the mayor. I thought his comments that talked about how the housing changes through the years from farmhouse to Victorian to mid-century modern and so on was a good description of the evolution that neighborhoods take. So I believe that I was poised, if I didn't already start it, to make a motion at that time to approve this project, and there are several steps in this. And I'm going to look to staff. Can I just do one motion that covers all of these, or do I need to do separate motions on these?
We would recommend a motion on the environmental impact report to be separate from the other items.
Okay, fine. I'll go ahead and do that. But I did want to make one other comment, and that is that just to remind everyone that the continuation was to get additional information from both the hospital and the county on its interest in the land, and we did get information from the hospital that indicated that it is not a priority for them, and not in their plans in the foreseeable future. And the county did remind us of the value of the sale of the land to the taxpayers of the county for funding services for the county. So, given all that background, I will move to certify the environmental impact report and adopt the mitigation monitoring and reporting program.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none. Oh, Vice Mayor?
I can't support the motion and won't support the motion. At the last hearing we had on this, I did make questions to staff or comments regarding same issue that just came up with North 40 on this environmental impact report regarding the Dell Avenue development, which is analyzed for $1 million, which has now gone to $3 million. I think the analysis is the same. And in fact, I think it's actually more important because this development is virtually across the street from the Dell Avenue. So I'm not going to be supporting the motion.
Councilmember Spector.
I will be supporting the motion in part for what the Vice Mayor said, but more especially, as I stated last time, because this is a planned development. Our town ordinances are very specific about what is a planned development. It needs extraordinary design or a good use of open space. This is neither. And so when I can't support the underlying development, neither do I support the environmental impact report.
Any other discussion? I'll be supporting the motion because I look at this parcel and I look at the property surrounding it and I look at our ordinance and our planned development ordinance. I know that we're working on revising that. It hasn't come through the Planning Commission yet, but perhaps if it were to come through the Planning Commission in the future, it might consider more tailoring to this new type of housing in this format. So I think this project may be in front of that. It's kind of a design that people like to live in today. I think it fits the location of where it's at. Regarding the Dell Avenue project and its impact on this project, in our previous hearing, there was that snapshot in time. You have to pick something and go somewhere with that. You can't hold the new information over everyone's head continually. I didn't vote for in the last hearing based on that in particular. So I will be supporting the motion. So I'll call the question if there's no discussion. Vice Mayor.
I thought we were limiting our discussion to the EIR, but if we're talking about the plan development as well, I agree with Councilwoman Spector. I don't think that this meets the intent of our current plan development statute 2980-080, that plan development overlay zone is to provide for alternative uses and developments more consistent with site characteristics than are allowed in other zones, and so create an optimum quantity and use of open space and encourage good design. We don't have that here. We have lots of residents squeezed onto a single lot. I think it would behoove us to wait until we got our new plan development ordinance back for consideration before we were to allow developments to go in under the old one that copy the ones that caused us to re-examine plan development ordinance in the first place.
Thank you. Discussion. So I agree in principle with that. However, this is one of those things where I try to look at the particular use in this particular location. And if we were to apply our current standards, you would be putting R18 development there potentially, or commercial development. We heard discussion from the speaker at the last meeting that the feasibility of the commercial may not be something feasible. The parcel could end up sitting there unpopulated or undeveloped for a number of years. So I take that into consideration. I take into consideration the affordability. If we were to put, 7 or 8 houses on there and develop it as R18 and apply rules of the plan development, I don't think that would be in the best interest of serving the folks who will be buying those homes and living in those homes. It would make it less affordable for them, and I think it would be oddly placed in that location. It is a location where it is surrounded by apartments and some medical office buildings. It will be surrounded perhaps in the future by more hospital facilities at the corner. It's behind a shopping center. So it's very difficult for me to just take the rules as written and apply them in this instance. And I understand, I absolutely respect the point of view of Councilmember Spector and the Vice Mayor and the Planning Commission's recommendation, but I'm looking at this project individually and trying to apply some of my life experience to it and some common sense. And I'm hoping in the future we can, look at new types of housing and consider new types of housing moving forward, because perhaps this is what the public really wants to live in now and what they can afford to live in now. But again, that's for further discussion in the future by the Planning Commission, and then it'll be moving on to Council. So any other discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 3-2. Looking for a second motion. Councilmember McNutt.
And back to staff again. Can I combine the next two? Oh, good, thank you. So I'll move for a general plan amendment from public to office professional, and then the approval of the plan development as outlined in our staff report and many other pages of documents.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
So the motion carries 3-2. And we have no more.
We have
That's
to
it.
waive the reading and read this out.
So we have the reading of the ordinance.
Ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos amending the town code affecting a zone change from O to OPD for property located at 375 Knowles Drive.
Thank you. So with that read, we're done. All right, I just want to comment one more time on this. My primary concern about this particular project was the hospital being potentially displaced. When they wrote the letter, and their letter said that that was not essentially something that was on their future plans to develop as a hospital space, I thought that it was no longer in jeopardy of us losing the hospital. It was entirely different than the testimony that was given by the gentleman who actually wrote the letter at the public hearing, and that's why I continued it to this evening. I'm glad I was able to get that information, as well as the letter from the county that explained their position on this property, and I think at this point in time it's important to move forward with this. Councilmember McNutt.
It's been called to my attention that perhaps we need a motion to waive the reading of the ordinance also, just to tie up the last loose end.
You certainly could. We believe that was included in your non-EIR motion, your second motion.
Okay. I certainly intended it that way.
All right, so with that said, thank you everybody for coming this evening. This meeting is adjourned.